Do you know the capital sins? Could you name those deadly sins? Let's see how far we get. Raise your hand if you would, if you know one, and yell it out. Pride. That's usually the first one that comes up. Hubristic pride. Lust. That's a good one too. If sin can be good. What is it? Sloth. I actually asked this question because I wasn't sure how to pronounce most of these. Sloth, yes. Envy. Envy, that's malicious envy. So 4 down, 5, 6, 7, 3 to go. Greed, that's the one you just heard about in the gospel. Greed. Okay, greed, that leaves 3. Gluttony, thank you, Jesus. What is it? Vanity, nope, that was the first reading though. Good, they're all vanities. Actually, so you're not totally wrong. Avarice, what does that mean? Envy, is that envy? Oh, that's greed. Avarice is greed. Well, now I just gave you another one. Envy, yeah. Covetousness, envy. Envy, hang on one more second. Malicious envy, we did already. Yes. Who said that? Inordinate anger. Good job, you guys. Inordinate anger. Obviously, anger is normal. One more, I think, right? No, that's it. Dang. You guys are good. Those are 7 obstacles to life and to love, and they are deadly. People seem to not like talking about sin anymore. It's just too dark for some of us, too negative. Of all the homilies I give that are online for 25 years now almost, the ones that get the least hits are the ones that have sin in the title. But I have to tell you what I appreciate about our church is our church is willing to take a stab at the dark side of humanity, to take a stab at the dark side of my own humanity, and that aware of those 7 issues that plague us, we can become more conscious, more aware of what's going on inside of us all the time so that we can make better, healthier, freer choices that will lead to a more fulfilling and an actually joyful life. These things are anything but negative in the end. Knowing that that is in us and knowing that those things are pulling in us all the time and pulling us in dark directions, we can become hyper-conscious in a good way of them so that we're alert and not broadsided by them and all of a sudden find ourselves acting in ways, where did that come from? Alert to our tendencies and cravings that will help us then in our alertness and our consciousness to right the ship. To right the ship of our lives. And so the church is willing to name these destructive tendencies, and in doing that, it's doing us a favor. It's not fun, but it's doing us a favor, even though sometimes it's really hard to hear. Each of those 7 deadly sins are rooted in our scriptures. At one point or another in Jesus' ministry, he pointed them out to us for our sake. It's a loving thing to do. And he's doing it right here in the gospel with one of those 7. These are the attitudes, these 7 capital sins, we call them. That means the worst sins. These 7 deadly sins, these are the attitudes underneath all the actions. And we have to get at what's underneath and talk to ourselves about that underneath part so that our actions can change. These are what should be confessed. I don't know what you say when you go to confession, but these are the sins that should be confessed. And for sure, they're attending actions because they hurt people. When I go to confession, I try to get away from just a list of a bunch of acts. And I try, and it's very humbling, which counters actually pride, it's very humbling to name in all humility and with not a small amount of fear the roots of my actions, the roots of those weeds. Because as you and I know, if you don't pull the weeds up by the roots, they're going to just keep coming back. Dante defined each of these as a perversion, a corruption of a natural desire. We have basic good desires in us, but each of these capital sins, each of these deadly sins is a corruption of that, a perversion of those basic desires that come from a perversion in the end of love. These sins are abuses, are excessive versions of those natural passions in us. For example, gluttony with eating. We all have a natural desire to eat, but it gets twisted, perverted into harming our bodies and therefore hurting people who care about us. If left undealt with, they will sever the heart from the body. If left untamed, the soul will get cut off from God. If left untamed, we will be incapable of real connection with each other or with this good earth. If left untamed, these things literally kill us, and in extreme cases, they literally kill other human beings. In the end, if left untamed, they will render us incapable of love. And each of these, my friends, is in us. They're in me, and they are in you. No exceptions to this. Usually one of these will become our loudest demon, our fiercest demon, but each is in all, really. And the church in its wisdom tells us that we can take these sins and flip them into something wonderful. We can flip them into something good. As a matter of fact, the church has a list of the 7 greatest virtues, and each of them is an antidote to the 7 deadly sins. Let me go down the list real briefly, if you would. This homily might be a teeny bit longer than usual, so hang in there. Let me go down this list, and I ask you to ask yourself, is that my demon? Is that my meanest and fiercest demon? Lust. Lust is the tendency in each of us to thingify another human being, to use a human being and make an object out of them for our gain. This is not just about sexuality, this is also about economics. Do I use people to get ahead in my life? Do I treat people as one-dimensional objects for my gain on any level? And the counter virtue is chastity. But that's not a very popular word anymore. But let me tell you, chastity is about having this enormous regard for other people, an enormous regard for another human being, respecting them as different from me, as other than me, and not using them for my gain. They're not there for me to get ahead. They're there in my life for me to serve and to honor for who he or she is in my life. And instead of forcing them to serve me and my needs, let's learn to attend to them and their needs. Because really, it's all about helping others flourish, not making sure they're helping me flourish. Is that your demon? Is lust finding its way into action in your life? I had a pastor who every time he said the word lust, he added about 7 U's. Lust. Is that your demon? Huge. That's a lot of U's. Gluttony. Gluttony is that tendency in us to consume, and never learn how to let be. To leave that extra piece of cake free for somebody else to enjoy, to leave the rose on its stem in the garden for somebody else to stop and enjoy and smell. This awful and destructive tendency in us can be flipped into moderation. And even though there's always a bit of a letting go and an act of moderation, if you're full of lust, like I am, or gluttony, it can be flipped into something that feels really free. Is gluttony your demon? Greed is the word for that insatiable appetite in us for more, more, more. Give me more. Refusing to let anything or anyone be enough for us. When is a house big enough? When does someone care enough for me? This is an insatiable appetite we have. And greed can be flipped into generosity, into charity. It's a way to take that greedy part of us and make it something noble that grows us. Greedy people never know peace. The fact that nothing's ever enough for them and no one's ever enough for them condemns them to a restless, anxious life. And to those of us who are greedy, Jesus says in this gospel, you idiot, you fool. What are you thinking? What good did all that do for you? The more you got, the more you wanted. Did it help? Recent studies, massive studies, say that the happiest among us are the ones who give the most away, not the ones who have the most. But we don't let that fact in, do we? Is greed your demon? And greedy has a sibling called envy. It just keeps popping up in us, doesn't it? It makes us say things about others we know we shouldn't be saying. It makes us put others down and treat others with contempt. It makes us want to judge them quickly, when the truth is it's all really about us in the end, not about them. Envy can be turned into gratitude. And then there's sloth. Sloth, the Pope went after this one just yesterday in Poland in front of hundreds of thousands of millennials gathered around him there. Sloth says, I don't care. I don't care about that. I don't care about you. I noticed on Facebook the other day, one of our students had it as his profile. There's a place on the profile where you can put politics and then a space over here, and most people put Democrat or Republican or whatever. This guy put down, I don't care. That's sloth. It is the noonday devil. We can turn it into diligence. We can turn it into valuing hard work. But we have to learn how to appreciate hard work. What the Pope said yesterday to these hundreds of thousands of young people, he said, get off the couch. Put on your shoes. And then he said, better yet, put on your boots. And get out there. The world needs you. Get messy. Get dirty. Get off the couch. Act. Is that your demon? Is it sloth? We all have all these. Wrath, the demon of wrath, that's the unchecked anger in us. Whoa, do we have unchecked angers. Drive down Highway 64. We can turn that into patience. We can flip that unchecked anger into patience and into conviction. We can turn it into righting the wrongs done to me and to anybody on this earth. We can turn it into taking a stand for things that will leave everybody a little bit better off. And most important, we can forgive. We can forgive. It's the only hope that opens a future for us. And finally, if wrath or sloth or envy or greed or gluttony or lust are not your demons, there is always that pride. That's anything in us that thinks for a second that I'm better than you. anything in us that leads to the delusion that we're somehow more important to you because it makes me think without thinking that I must be the center of your life, and the reason you didn't do that for me is because I'm obviously the center of your life and you ignored me. Well, the good news is you're not the center of anybody's life. People stand where they stand when they look at the world, when they look at you. Pride can be flipped into humility, and every study will tell you that humility is the single most attractive virtue we can carry into the world. Is pride our fiercest demon? Once we see it, once we see those things, once we put words on them for ourselves, as hard as it is to face in ourselves, to admit it out loud, that's the beginning of freedom. That's the crack in the door for love to begin to happen for us. There's not a day to be wasted, my friends, not an hour can be wasted being jealous or lazy or arrogant or greedy or bitter and resentful or getting fat in life. None of it, not an hour, can be wasted excusing ourselves in these directions because it only keeps us from going forward. As a matter of fact, it doesn't just keep us from going forward, it sets us back. If I eat an extra donut today, not only do I get a bunch of junk in my body and another 100 calories, if I exercise tomorrow like I exercised yesterday, then I'm back to even. I haven't even progressed. And this is what happens when we live with this kind of junk, these kinds of attitudes in our body. They take us backwards. As soon as we become aware of it, as soon as I become aware of these things in me, I have to tell you, I get my butt to confession as fast as I can to right that ship. And I really believe that we can counter these things in us with the help of another human being, somebody we trust, somebody we let know us, somebody we choose to be accountable to. When they tell us these things, it will help us stay on track, and it can make the hugest difference in the world. So can a good confessor. We can't try to do this by ourselves. It's too insidious. But if we really want to be free and get past that fear and past the delusions, a good confessor or a good friend can make all the difference. You see, these are 7 obstacles to life and to love. They are deadly indeed. I don't tell you these things to get you down on yourself. That'd be the wrong kind of humility. I tell you these things because the church tells us these things. And it's something I very much value about our church. That the church cares enough about me and about you to tell us how we can be free, even if it hurts to hear. Because the church believes in you and wants you and wants me to live. And I mean really live.